It's one of the memories that I have as a very young child, and I had to be 3 years old because the war ended in 1918, and I was born in 1950. And we were standing in the doorway of our house, which was on a courtyard. The barns were, chicken coops and the houses. And the neighbors were standing there because the armistice was signed, and everybody was so happy. We were just sort of greeting each other, congratulating each other. The war ended. So I didn't really know at that time about, but in my memory, I think back to that day, and I know that was the reason, because I think we spoke of it even after that. But it was, a very special day, the armistice. I was married in 40, and we came out here in 45, and I had my first child. He was 17 months old. And I loved Vancouver. I have to say, coming across, with mountains, coming from Winnipeg, there isn't a hill anywhere. Here I felt a little bit shrouded in, and I've learned to love them. And of course, Vancouver is so beautiful, especially we came late August. Everything seemed to be in bloom, and it was, compared to what Winnipeg was at that year, it was a real treat to come to. And of course, we came because my husband's sister had already moved here, living here. I was very heavy when I was young, and I hated myself. And consequently, it sort of ruled and ruined my life in some way.
Slightly obsessive.
All's well that ends well. I can't believe here I am, 99 years old, and I still do aerobics twice a week and Tai Chi twice a week. And I do everything for myself, except that Bonnie is my blessing. I have to tell you, I don't know of a mother that's had such a good daughter.
The thing I tell Mother and I tell Lanny is they don't ask me to do things I can't do. So, and they don't seem to be able or want to do some of these things. It's not like it's deep, but they don't understand some of the ways things work.
And then my husband got a bright idea that he wanted to buy a business out in Richmond, which I tried to talk him out of it because it was a grocery store. It was really like a little general store. And Richmond at that time we referred to as Lulu Island. We never even called it Richmond. And I hated ditches because I was born on the farm, and we moved into Winnipeg proper when I was already 8 years old. So I remembered the streets. And I used to worry that we were going to fall into the ditch always. But, however, he talked me into it, and we went. But once he got into the business, he hated the small penny women worrying about every penny, which I do too. And so we stayed there 3 years, and Bonnie was born in the bunk when we lived in the bunk. And I did most everything I could to earn, because my husband, in the meantime, in between, had a heart attack. He had asthma pretty badly, and it was very tough on him. So I looked for work. And I applied to Woodwards at that time, was very popular. And I got hired there, and I worked in the credit office there for 10.5 years.
So what decade was that? When was that? The 40s, the 50s?
Yeah, it would be the 50s by now, I guess. Anyway, I didn't mind the job. I hated having to work with 2 kids to raise. I feel they were neglected up to a point, because you can't be working full-time and doing a full-time job, which I did, very much. And I rented out every inch of space we could in the little place we had. Anyway, I decided finally, after complaining about this manager, he was the kind of guy that if he wanted to reprimand you about anything, he wouldn't do it privately in the office. He'd make sure you were in the where everybody else was, 100 people sort of, so he could reprimand you in front of everybody. And that used to bother me. Not that he did it to me, he would do it to. So finally, I guess I'd complain about that at the supper table, when I'd come home, and the kids and my husband got after me, quit. So I finally gathered up enough nerve So then I still had to work. But, and I'm the kind of worker that I'm so, you know, reliable. I mean, I have to do what they expect from me, which I shouldn't have been. I remember she phoned me one day and crying. She didn't feel well, and I couldn't leave the office at Woodwards. They didn't look at family life that much. It could be there was that manager, but you couldn't do it. One of the women, her daughter was getting married in Hawaii, I think, and wanted the mother to come to the wedding, and they wouldn't let her take a week off to go to the wedding. I remember she was so unhappy. She needed the job, so she couldn't go. I remember he thought he was the nicest and best guy in the world, but he was so mean.
And nobody ever told him to go jump in a lake.
Well,
amazing.
Everybody needed their job, I guess. And by that time, I was a widow. I had lost my husband, Bonnie's father. I was a widow for about 3 years, I guess. And, that's right. I had very bad back. Most of my life I suffered. And I had been in the hospital after I quit Woodwards to get my back surgery. And it took a while, but I started to feel better. And the first day I was going out to the dentist, a friend phoned me to meet her for lunch downtown because she had a cousin in the mart where she wanted to get a blouse or something from him. So that's what I did. And while I was with her in her cousin's office, a guy poked his head in, his neighbor, and said, if you girls are looking for a suit or something, I'm sending my samples back, but you can get them before I send them back. And I had to shop with my back being sore and one thing and another for it seemed like ages. So I said to my friend, she was looking at the blouses, I says, I'll go in and look at the suits, and you come in when you're finished. And I loved the suit he had, and and he started to proposition me, like he was a real, hard to express it, just a personality guy. But of course I mentioned that I work only in the morning. And I come out, and there he is in a big limousine waiting to take me to lunch. So that started a little romance, and 3 months later we were married. Wow. Actually, I never thought he wanted to get married, and I said, I'll never get married again. But he had a sister living in Montreal. He didn't listen to me. He phoned her, and he said, Dorothy, I want you to talk to the gal I'm going to marry. I hadn't said yes yet. Anyway, we had a really, he was a lot of fun. We had a good marriage.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I came in here into the seniors' home because of him. We had really had 30 years, no, it was less because we were a few years when he lost his eyesight. He lost his hearing eventually. But before that, we traveled back east twice a year because he represented a ladies' wear line. And then we went to Palm Springs every winter, which he had already been doing for 30 years before he met me. Wow. So it was a good life, but when he got so I couldn't really look after the house and him, we moved into the terraces.